This is the Wheel of Time podcast on TV Podcast Industries, and we are talking about episode 1 of the Wheel of Time, Leavetaking.
The world is broken. Many, many years ago, men who were born with great power believed they could cage darkness itself. The arrogance. When they failed, the seas boiled, mountains were swallowed up, cities burned, and the women of the Aes Sedai were left to pick up the pieces. These women remembered one thing above all else: the man who brought the breaking of the world. And him they named Dragon. Now this man has been born again. We don't know where or to whom, if he was reborn as a girl or a boy. The only thing we know for certain is that this child is coming of age now, and we must find them before the dark does.
Welcome to the Wheel of Time podcast, Dragon Reborn, or fellow timers, or fellow wheelers, whatever you would like to call yourselves. We will certainly be running through all those different iterations for our lovely listeners joining us either for the first time or coming back to us from our other podcasts, whether that is on the Marvel shows, whether that has been on Why the Last Man. But yes, you are very welcome to this, the first spoiler-filled discussion of episode 1 of The Wheel of Time, Leavetaking. I am one of your hosts, John.
And I'm your other host for this episode, Derek.
Yes. Chris, unfortunately, is the third person in the Holy Trinity, or that is TV Podcast Industries, and sadly, he cannot be with us due to scheduling conflicts with that dreadful thing called work.
Yeah, I know. Yes, it's not unfortunate that Chris is our other host. It's unfortunate he can't join us for this episode.
That is true. That is true. And he is, after all, the one of the three that has read the most books. So you'll be amazed at the knowledge that he'll bring, his encyclopedic knowledge that he brings about the Wheel of Time. I have read the first book.
Mm-hmm. And I've read none of the books. The last time we were on holidays, John picked up the first book of the Wheel of Time to read it, handed me another book, another fantasy book, which I read cover to cover and absolutely loved, but it wasn't the Wheel of Time.
No, it wasn't. That's what I was reading.
I couldn't have even made the mistake that it was Wheel of Time. I don't even mean that. I just mean I was reading a fantasy book, and I was it had the same kind of beats that I would expect in most fantasy books. But it was completely different. The Wheel of Time has nothing on it. So I have no knowledge of the Wheel of Time other than what's being presented to me on the TV show as the episodes air. So I will be your guide for the non-book readers among us. Chris will be for the experienced book readers, and John's the novice book readers. I think that's where we're going, right?
Yes, I will be. I will be representing those people that probably think they know more than they actually do about the Wheel of Time. I'm currently into the second book of the Wheel of Time, and picking up the first book was in anticipation of doing this podcast. Absolutely. And I have to say, I did absolutely race through the first book. Uh-huh. I really, really did enjoy it. Yeah. And maybe I have a little bit too much in-depth, precise knowledge of the first book, so close to the first episode of the first season of The Wheel of Time as well.
We are all big fantasy fans here. This is the second big fantasy show that we've covered on TV Podcast Industries. We have been podcasting about TV for over 6 years now, with many, many shows that we've covered over the course of that 6 years. You can see all the stuff we've covered by going to tvpodcastindustries.com, and you can pick up one of the 42 shows, I think, that we've covered since the beginning of our time podcasting. So lots and lots of stuff in there. The only other fantasy show that we've covered, I think, is is The Witcher, would be the only similar type of fantasy show that we cover. We'll be covering season 2 of The Witcher coming up in 2022. But this is our first big series from Amazon Prime. I know we will be covering the Lord of the Rings show, which is also going to be on Amazon Prime in the future. So we have got our fantasy credentials, let's say, but maybe not in-depth knowledge of Wheel of Time between myself and John, anyway.
Yes, and maybe not so much fantasy, but we did cover Penny Dreadful as well, with a lot of different mythical horror lore as well thrown in to boot. But yes, as Derek said, please pop on over to our website at tvpodcastindustries.com, where you can support us by subscribing to any good or evil podcast player of your choice. Please share the podcast, because that is sharing the love. You can also head on over there to leave any voicemails that you would like to for our feedback section. And of course, you can send in feedback through to feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com as well.
Absolutely. And we do want to hear from you throughout the series. We are lucky enough to be recording this podcast ahead of the release on Amazon Prime, coming out on the 19th of November for the first 3 episodes. But we do want to hear your thoughts about each of those episodes. You can go over to our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/TV Podcast Industries. There'll be a spoiler post for every episode as it comes out, where you can leave your spoiler-filled thoughts there, or as John mentioned, you can email us to our feedback email address. And there's a bit of good news and bad news as we go into this first podcast. We are under embargo from Amazon Prime, and it's a bit of a weird one. We are unable to talk about certain elements of the episodes until the Saturday after episodes released at 5 p.m. GMT. So bad news is the episodes that we record won't be coming out until 5 p.m. Saturdays after the episode airs. But the good news is you can send your feedback into us before that time, and it'll be included in the podcast.
Yeah, it's in that sense it's really good, but in the other sense it's really weird that there is an embargo effectively a day and a half after the episodes are released. Just simply because I guess most of it will be out there ultimately.
Oh, absolutely.
So, but nonetheless, that's the terms we've agreed to. So shackled.
I know, but we have seen other podcasts that have been able to record their episodes and put them out there before we've been able to put ours out. But that's okay. We are looking forward to hearing your thoughts, and we do have some thoughts and feedback from you already on the episodes. So looking forward to hearing what you have to say about each of the episodes. I think with that, John, I think we need to get into our discussion about episode 1 of The Wheel of Time, Leavetaking.
Yes, Derek, what are some of the episode details?
Based on the book series by Robert Jordan, 15 books in the series. This is based around technically the first 2 books within this first series, but to confirm here right up front, this has already been greenlit for a second season, already filming that second season as well. So even though season 1 only has 8 episodes in it, season 2 already been confirmed as well. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah, really good news. That we also have a season 2 of our Wheel of Time podcast as well.
Well, exactly. Showrunner for this show is Rafe Judkins. Rafe wrote many episodes of TV in the past. For me, the one I'm going to call out is that he wrote 5 episodes of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Excellent.
And he did 9 episodes of Chuck, which I know Chris, our other co-host, is a huge fan of. He was also a contestant on the 11th season of Survivor in Guatemala, John.
Excellent stuff. Yes, we are Survivor fans as well. And I have to say, I do not remember old Rafe Judkins from it, but I will certainly have to go looking because, yes, outlast, outwit, outplay. I wonder who in the Wheel of Time will be doing that.
Absolutely. I'm sure when you look back at the 11th season of Survivor, you'll recognize Rafe Judkins on there. He also wrote this episode as the showrunner for the show, and the episode was directed by Ute Briesewitz. We know Ute Briesewitz very well,
yes,
because she directed 2 episodes of Jessica Jones, an episode of Iron Fist, and an episode of The Defenders, all over Netflix, on Marvel Netflix, when we covered each of those episodes.
Yes, our Defenders podcast from the Marvel Netflix era, and now covering all the Disney Plus TV shows as well. So yes, a few Marvel connections here for ourselves and the Defenders, which is, I guess, our big podcast that is the most long running, along with Gotham TV podcast at this stage, as it used to be known, I should say. But certainly
podcast,
with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and the Marvel Netflix stuff, there's plenty of creative connections behind the camera.
Yeah, absolutely. But I always remember Uta's particular style. We talked about it quite a bit on the Jessica Jones show, which is probably one of the most popular of the Netflix Marvel shows. So great to see her on board for this season of The Wheel of Time. But John, do you want to tell us what they gave us with your synopsis for episode 1 of The Wheel of Time?
Sure. The remote mountain village of Emond's Field, nestled between the mighty two rivers, are preparing for a celebration. As the community gathers together, Rand al'Thor and his father Tam head down from their sheep farm high up in the mountains, and he meets up with his friends. Mat Cauthon, the lovable rogue whose dysfunctional family is struggling to make ends meet, and Perrin Aybara, the village blacksmith whose marriage is strained. Close by, Egwene Alver is initiated into the women's circle as an apprentice for the town's wisdom, Nyneave Almira, to learn and hold the social protocols of the community. At the Winespring Inn, Rand, Mat, and Perrin are joined by Egwene as they share beers and the festive mood begins to take hold. But the arrival of a strange noblewoman, Moiraine Damodred, and Aes Sedai and her Warden, Lan Mandragoran, interrupt the festivities in more ways than one. Moiraine and Lan are here to discover the holder of an ancient power, the Dragon Reborn, who once destroyed the world and is foretold to return. She believes he resides in Emond's Field and is certain that it is one of the youths in her sight at that moment in the Whispering Inn, Rand, Mat, Perrin, or Egwene. However, they are not the only ones looking for the Dragon Reborn. Other, darker forces are on the prowl in the Twin Rivers to discover their master. As the evening draws to a close at the inn, Rand and his father head off home, where they are attacked by a Trollic. In the fight, the Trollic is killed, but Rand must get back to the village urgently, as his father has been badly injured. But Emond's Field has not escaped the Trollics and their leader, Myrddraal. While they were beaten back by Moiraine using energy from the true source, the village lies in ruins. Perrin's wife has been killed, and the town's wisdom, Nyneave, has been taken, presumed dead. In the aftermath, Rand, Mat, Perrin, and Egwene realize that the only way to save themselves, their loved ones, and the village is to leave Emond's Field for the White Tower, to discover their destiny and place their trust in strangers.
Excellent, John. An opening episode, as usual, with this type of show filled full of exposition and new characters and new names.
Lots of names, all vying for multiple pronunciations, I guess.
Absolutely. It's so interesting when you see an adaptation of a book that you've read and see how other people are pronouncing the names that you've been pronouncing completely differently for such a long time when you're reading. Yeah.
Well, that is definitely it. I think I was calling Moiraine, and as I read, as I was reading, it was Aes Sedai.
Right.
Whereas it's Aes Sedai here.
Yes.
And I guess, yes, that's probably, and more than likely the correct version, but it's just, I've gotten into these bad habits ultimately for how I've pronounced them.
But are they bad habits? You don't get a read along in the margins of every page of how you can pronounce it. Like, I'm sure I'm going to call Egwene throughout the show, especially because how it's spelt. I'm sure we're going to be mispronouncing the names, but it is all okay because we are talking about characters that we are seeing for the first time in the episode. But John, do you want to talk through how we are going to cover the episodes of the show?
Yes, we are going to take our top 3 spokes of the Wheel of Time. Yes,
I see.
It is
spokes on a bicycle wheel.
Exactly.
Okay.
And one of those funky ones as well that only has 3. Yes. Much harder to engineer, I believe. But yes, we will be going through our top 3 spokes of each episode through the course of the season.
For our fellow listeners who haven't listened to TV podcast industries before, the reason why John has chosen spokes is because spokes hold up the wheel. Spokes hold up the wheel of time. And the 3 spokes will hold up the episode. We'll be able to cover everything in the episode by choosing 3 big points, right?
Yes,
there
exactly.
That's the explanation. If you're first time joining us, we struggle every time choosing what we're going to name them. But that makes sense for the Wheel of Time.
Yes, it was easy enough when we covered The Punisher. We just called them bullet points.
Exactly.
Normally we just call them points, but sometimes, the mood is in us to mess around and play around with it. a little bit.
Yes.
Once we've gone through our top 3 spokes, we will have our notes section, and returning again to the podcast will be the pub quiz.
Oh, yes.
Yes, so it'll be the Wheel of Time pub quiz. Be a question each week on the episode. Answers can be sent in through our email at feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com. And then at the end of all 8 episodes, we will pull out a winner from all of those who have entered.
Yep.
We'll see who gets the top scores, and then pull out a winner, and they'll be in with a good shout for some goodies, Wheel of Time themed.
Exactly. So, yes, keep an eye out. They're usually observational questions in our Wheel of Time pub quiz. So, something that you will have seen on the screen in Wheel of Time, or something that somebody says in the episodes. But what is our first spoke to discuss? What's the big first point about the episode, John?
I've called it jump.
Okay.
And that is the kind of impending brightness that we begin with, the impending festival of lights, the Feast of Lights, and all the village of Emond's Field coming together to celebrate that in different ways. But it also is relating to Egwene's initiation as well, as I guess she jumped or she was pushed.
I feel like she was pushed.
I think so.
Yeah.
And I think you probably would need it.
I also feel like she didn't know that was going to happen to her. Exactly. I think there was kind of a comment from Nyneave, just trust in the river, as she looks out over it, and it feels much more instructional for life, and then she gets pushed into the river, and it's like, no, I mean, trust in the current of the river to save you right now. Like,
absolutely.
This is really interesting. Again, we're being introduced to so many different concepts in here, but this idea of the circle of women and being, and this new apprentice coming in for Nyneave, and what Egwene's place in this society is, I suppose, is a really interesting one. This is something brand new to me, from the story, obviously. So, it feels like this is a very, it feels like the Circle of Women is kind of a very strong group in this village, but it feels like the wisdom, this position that Nyneave holds, feels like a big guiding position in the village. Someone that would be a reasonably kind of a noble person, or someone that gives guidance to the rest of the village. Would that be?
Yeah, I mean, it's. The society in this world is heavily matriarchal, whether with the Aes Sedai and with the Circle of Women, that kind of act as a counterpoint. They're almost like independent of the village council, right, or group that also lead the village.
Yeah.
And it's all about they will heal people. It's preserving social protocols, orders, and so on, solve disputes, but it's all made up of women, and at the head of that is the wisdom, who is Nyneave. And within this episode we hear them talking about listening to the wind.
Yes.
And there's this skill that they have. But it's a very skilled position, is the wisdom. And in this moment, not only is Egwene being initiated into the Circle of Women, they almost form this kind of, I guess, bicameral kind of political sort of grouping within the village, next to the council of the village. But it's also she has been asked to become the apprentice to Nyneave.
Yeah, it's two different things. Yeah. Effectively, she's being told that she has this sisterhood that will be around her at all times, and also that she'll become potentially, if she wants the position, which we find out by the end of the episode she does, she'll be the apprentice of Nyneave and develop her skills, her abilities to be able to listen to the wind, which doesn't make sense to me in this episode. I'm sure something like that will make sense further down in the series as we get more explanation. But even in and of itself, this scene does deliver a huge amount of exposition, a huge amount about who this character is and what her destiny is in the future, and that she also has some form of latent magic powers underneath everything, is what it's revealing to me.
Yeah, it's that ability. You see them on the bridge listening to the wind go rushing through the trees.
Yeah.
And both of them saying, can you hear that? This kind of particular power that can pick up on that, as you say.
And I'm assuming it's a different power than I have to stop on a bridge and listen to the wind, that they can actually hear something else in it other than wind. So
yes, it sounded as well thrown into that, this idea that they can hear voices through it as well. In that sense, I suspect it was the fade that we see here, and we'll come to that later. But it sounded kind of evil, and Nyneave says, I've never heard this before.
Right.
It's something new in the wind, and it ain't Brussels sprouts. Okay. Let's just say that. But I mean, the initiation, it's some initiation.
Absolutely.
Being pushed off, a gorge into the river. That river looked pretty cold to me. So I guess it was pretty hard on Madeline Madden, having to be in it the stunt double as well.
I'm sure.
If one was involved. So definitely, this is it's another big piece of it, and it's cementing what we see right at the start, where we have the monologue from Moiraine, talking about the destroyer of world, how arrogant men thought they could tame darkness, and we see that with the chase as well, with the other Aes Sedai who corner down a man who is thought to be the Dragon Reborn, and they say the power was meant for women and women alone. So it's just building that world here. And I think it was done really sort of well. I mean, the vistas are really impressive. I love the locations, with the gorge, the mountains around Emond's field, and also the chase, right at the start. But, this is sort of a big part of this world.
Absolutely. And the other thing I picked up on was this idea of the braid in the hair being put in when you join the circle of women. So we see Egwene getting her hair braided by the circle that's around her, and being told that this will be your reminder that you're not alone. You will never be alone. You'll always have the women in the circle of women as part of yourself from now on. Yeah. I like that was used later on as well, when Moiraine's having the conversation with Nyneave about whether she could potentially be the Dragon Reborn. I know we're going to talk about the Dragon Reborn part of the episode separately in another point, but I just like that came back later on, and Moiraine was able to tell from how big her braid was that she's had it for a long time.
Yes.
And that it's a different braid. It's not something that somebody would get the minute they join the circle of women, that it is something that develops over time as well. So I thought that was quite a nice call into the two.
I mean, it's almost, the position of the wisdom, it's almost semi-religious, in that sense. I mean, the braid is similar to some extent, I think, to sort of how the Sikh headdress and how they have their hair underneath that. There's the idea that, you'll have no husband and no children if you become a wisdom. There's a loneliness to this position, one that's a step away from the village and the community.
Yeah.
So, this is a big decision here that Egwene is making here, and I guess to some frustration for Rand, who we see here as well. At the start we get introduced to this group of friends of Rand and Mat and Perrin, and we see that Egwene has a relationship with Rand. He certainly has been besotted with her for a while. But he also, there is that really nice moment where he's sat on a rock and she comes to see him after sort of saying that she's going to take this apprenticeship.
Yes. She doesn't ever have to say that she's going to take it. He knew from the start.
Yes.
But that's kind of, that is something that I do really like about this idea that she's joining, this group, and also possibly going to be the apprentice. it's not that she's been bred for this since she was born. It's that this is a step she's taking at the age she is to join this circle of women. But the fact that she's going to become an apprentice does mean that she has to cut off all ties. And what we do see within this episode is she's clearly a member of this group of 4. They all know each other very well. She has a relationship with Ram, but she also knows the other guys really well. We saw Perrin wanted to stay by to wish her well. Mat was there to celebrate as well before other things happened and they all had to leave. But they all know each other really well. They're all close to each other. And she's effectively being told, if you go down this path, you have to cut off all ties with these people. And that has different impacts on each of those members of the group.
Yeah, definitely. We also have Mat, the kind of the trickster, the cheeky chappy.
Yeah.
Sort of trying to earn money. The real great line from the peddler, Padden Fane, where he says, my best and poorest customer.
Absolutely.
Really nice way. This Mat is seemingly the adult, actually, of his family. He looks after his 2 younger sisters because the family looks pretty dysfunctional. You have his mother and father, constantly arguing, the father chatting up with other women, and the mother seemingly, okay, it's the Feast of Lights, so maybe it's to do with the feast, but you get the impression that she would have that amount of alcohol in her on a normal weekend.
Well,
so.
yeah, when Mat brings her home, you hear the young girl saying, "Oh, is mommy sick again?" kind of thing.
Yes,
this happens all the time. Mat's definitely my favorite character of the show so far, and it's very interesting that the cheeky chappy side of things. I'm not sure whether that comes across to me so far in the episodes. He has some funny moments in the episode, but actually it's quite a sad existence that he has.
Yes.
I think the town itself, where it's based up in the mountains away from big cities, everybody seems to have a job and a role. Whereas Mat doesn't. Mat seems to be just about holding things together, and he's trying to gamble to get money. He clearly pays for all the food in the family because both of his parents seem to have no care for the two girls unless something really important happens, like they might be dead in the attack. That's when they suddenly remember they have 2 girls. Effectively, Mat seems to be the one that's taking care of the family.
Exactly.
But he's doing things like gambling money to try and get more money, basically.
Yeah, and he
stealing, and
and he gets his 2 sisters the lanterns for the festival.
Yeah, not by choice though. He wanted money.
No, exactly. He wants money, but it seems like we're here at a time with Rand, Perrin, and Mat where they're 20 years old, but it feels like Mat maybe has been 20 years old 5 years earlier than he is now because of the nature of his family.
Yeah. And it's interesting in that he's probably the best. As I say, he's my favorite character in the episode, but that's probably because he's the best drawn character of the episode. Everybody else is kind of falling into a little bit of you can tell their story in one line or one sentence, whereas Mat seems to have a lot more about his character at the moment in the episodes.
I love the character in the book, and I really have enjoyed the portrayal of Mat in this episode by Barney Harris. I thought it was really, really good, and sort of immediately drawn to him. So I think really good stuff. And then we have Perrin, who is the one half of the blacksmith of the village. Perrin is played by Marcus Rutherford, and there seems to be a strain here in his relationship with his wife. I mean, even Mat says, well, you're married now, so you're effectively your life is finished.
That's always the joke when you're the younger man who can go after anybody that's around you. Always the joke for the mate who's married is your life's over anyway. But you're right, there does seem to be a little bit of a strain. There's definitely a moment that I caught where Egwene has just returned from her initiation, and Perrin and Rand are waiting to speak to her, but he's kind of admonished a bit from Nyneave for being there. She kind of gives him a look and goes, shouldn't your wife be getting some help from you? It's very difficult to run the blacksmiths on her own, isn't it? Kind of get out of here, get away from Egwene. So, feels like there's something there between the two of them.
Yeah, definitely. It's interesting as well. In the book, as far as I can recall, he isn't married.
Right.
At this moment, there's no, I never really got the sense of that.
Right.
And that it was his father who was the town's blacksmith.
Okay.
So, they are also adapting the books, for different reasons and in different ways.
Mm-hmm.
And so, some of these things, may come out throughout the course of the series.
Well,
but
yes, we'll definitely talk a little bit more about his marriage later on in the episode as well.
Yes.
So because technically by the end of the episode he's not married.
No, he really isn't. But let's get on to spoke number 2.
Mm-hmm.
Derek,
Where do you want to take us to? Let's go to the strangers arriving in town, because that's kind of the focus of the episode. We talked a little bit about Moiraine and Lan, who Moiraine has come to town to find the Dragon Reborn. This is another big concept for the show, the kind of central concept, at least for this kick-off episode and probably the start of the series. This idea that there is a rebirth of the man who brought the breaking of the world, who was called the Dragon. This was the person who tried to cage the darkness and failed and destroyed parts of the world, and this led to the takeover of women. This sort of all the things I'm getting from this episode and all the things I'm getting from the exposition that's going on, particularly from Moiraine. What's interesting is what I thought was really interesting in this part was Moiraine and Lan are coming to town to find the Dragon Reborn. We see them watch a guy get caught by other Aes Sedai who potentially could have been the Dragon Reborn, and then watch him get slaughtered by them. And Moiraine just goes, well, that wasn't him, and walks on. Lan seems to be a little bit surprised at that she doesn't intervene at all to do any kind of tests to see if it could possibly be the guy. But it's interesting that effectively any man who shows signs of this power, the Aes Sedai are killing, effectively. They're taking them out immediately, which I thought was quite interesting.
Yeah, and this is, as the Aes Sedai who kills the guy, mentioned it earlier, power was meant for women and women alone, that men being able to touch the true source and the true source is the power, the energy that keeps the wheel turning, that they dirty it, they corrupt it.
Yes. And this is where the complication of the story comes in. We're following Moiraine from the start. She has a perspective on history of what happened and how men destroyed the world. And now we're already within the first 2 minutes of the episode, we're already meeting this group Aes Sedai, which we don't know much about. We haven't been really introduced to them at all. And they already have this very definitive, men can't have this power and you're going to die. So it feels like they aren't to be trusted right now. And knowing that she has met with her other 4 characters, or other main characters in this village, is Moiraine to be trusted or not, is what the episode is leaving me with, certainly.
Oh, definitely. And we see this with, Nynaeve is very, very, suspicious and wary of the Aes Sedai. She says, we'll be safer when they're gone. There is the moment in the pool where effectively that conversation is hugely confrontational. And Nynaeve lays it out that the wisdom that looked after her and who taught her how to become a wisdom at the age of 13, how they could listen to the wind and teach her with all of that walked to the White Tower, the stronghold of the Aes Sedai, but ultimately was turned away because of her peasant accent and torn clothes. And Nynaeve says, she never forgot that, and neither do I. So there is also a very personal side to this, I guess, dislike or suspicion to the Aes Sedai that Nynaeve holds. But it does go beyond that when the silence falls in the Winespring Inn, as Moiraine shows the ring, that really kind of announces that she's an Aes Sedai, and you see everyone watching her the following morning after the first night, looking. Part of it, curiosity, no doubt. And you hear Mat and Rand having those little, little bits of projection and intrigue about, well, what can they do? Can she hear us, even though she's just gone up the flight of stairs?
Absolutely.
All these different things playing and clouding the Aes Sedai.
Yeah. Absolutely, but the bar went into complete silence the second Lan opened the door. I've been in a few bars like that in Cork, to be honest. The second they hear the Dublin accent in Ireland, and everything goes silent. Get out! You're not in our bar. We don't know who you are. We haven't known your family for generations. What are you doing in our town? It's very much the reaction of Lan and Moiraine, their arrival here. But they are here to search for the Dragon Reborn. What I liked about it was, she says that there are 4 people in this village that could potentially be candidates, but she does go and question Nyneave, because Nyneave does kind of fit the frame. She may be in the similar age group as the other kids, effectively the 20-year-olds. She may be in a similar age group, but she just has to prod her out and just find out exactly, does she fit the profile? She has got some form of magic powers, I'm going to say. And she fits a similar age group, and nobody really knows her exact history and nobody knows her exact past. So, so when she finds out that she's 25, well, now she's outside of the frame. So that's the point when Moiraine decides, I'll walk away from this confrontation now.
It's that potential to be able to touch the true source.
Right.
This
still going to call it magic for a while.
This power. Yeah, no, exactly. I think the other two kind of interesting things from this is, I guess this distrust of the Aes Sedai. It's also, you hear from Rand's father, Tam. He talks about, well, because there is a war in the south at the moment. There is rumor of this.
Quite a few mentions of that in the town, and quite a few people kind of going, well, that's something that's going on in the south, not in our town.
Yes,
right now.
We don't need to worry about it.
We have our own threats to deal with. The whole thing of Tam and Rand realizing that the wolves are coming closer to them, which is, we find out at the end of the episode, that's really happening because there's an attack happening and the wolves are being driven towards the village because they're basically being chased by something else. But what's interesting is they're effectively saying the town has enough to worry about without worrying about what's going on down south in that war.
We're far enough removed from it.
Yeah.
It's a local pub for local people in that sense.
It's a local town that needs to deal with its own problems.
Exactly. But he talks that, well, the Aes Sedai don't go to war; they pull the strings. It's that idea that they're pulling strings, and it's that motivation aspect. What is motivating them?
Absolutely.
And that's the really sort of nice bit about it. I think the other thing is, with Moiraine and Lan arriving to look for the potential Dragon Reborn, is happening on the Feast of Lights.
Yes.
Which is about, you get that really, I thought it was a really nice view of Tam and Rand back at their farm after the day down in the village, putting the lantern out for their mother, and Rand asking, well, how long does the wheel need to turn until the souls that we've lost come back into this world? And Tam talks about how, well, it's long enough that we don't remember. It's this cyclic aspect of time that we come back each time and we try and do better. And I love the counterpoint to that in the village. Not necessarily counterpoint, but I kind of like the less philosophical way of looking at it, where the innkeeper's wife says, well, if you want your souls to come back, we need to give them something to come back to. Absolutely. Now start playing the music and enjoying yourselves, And so that's kind of a nice little sort of touch point, I think, with the Dragon Reborn and this whole festival.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose in my mind, I was trying to kind of piece together, because the Wheel of Time as a phrase obviously doesn't mean anything to me at the moment. I'm sure it will mean something in the future. So this is kind of the first introduction to what the Wheel of Time is. This idea that the celebration of lights is like a Remembrance Day festival. We all have those in around the world. This idea of remembering the lost, remembering people that are gone from your lives. But the concept of the Wheel of Time, from the description of Tam, seems to be that they're hoping for the return, the reincarnation of their loved ones. But it is a reincarnation. It's not somebody coming back from the dead. It's a reincarnation without memories. So it's very unlikely that we'll see somebody who dies coming back to the family that they lived with before. It's about they want their souls to come back and be reborn into the world, effectively. But they may never. It's not like they're expecting that Tam's wife, Rand's mother, will return at some point. It is that they're expecting her soul to live on in another reincarnated form in future.
Yes, as the wheel turns.
Right.
Yeah, I guess Shirley Bassey put it best, a sense of history repeating in that sense. But it's that cyclic element of time, that no end, no beginning. And that's one of, that's part of the big concept of, I guess, the religion or the philosophy or the outlook of this world and how it plays into the day-to-day in that sense.
Yes, I totally understand that now as a concept. And again, I'm sure this stuff will flesh out as the season progresses. But strangers arriving in the town is this point, and Moiraine and Lan aren't the only ones. We do see the eyeless or fade. Is that what Moiraine's calling them this?
Yes, the eyeless.
This strange looking creature who's ridden into town with no eyes and just its mouth visible underneath its hood. Very very dark looking creature, but clearly in town for the similar reason. It seems to be in town investigating the same kind of stories, perhaps, that it's heard, that Moiraine heard to lead her to the town about the Dragon Reborn. Certainly looking for the same people, I guess, in the town.
Yeah, I mean, again, this is another word that I didn't necessarily pronounce. It also known as a Myrddraal.
Okay.
I think a Myrddraal. Yeah, Myrddraal. It's when I was reading it sounded like I was drunk. It was like so. But fade, eyeless,
of wine while you're reading.
Yes, definitely. Eyeless and fade are so much easier to get the old tongue round. But yes, they're also looking for the Dragon Reborn, because ultimately they are servants of the Dark One, of the Dragon Reborn. Collectively, these armies are known as Darkspawn, and the Fade effectively we see the horned creatures later on. The Fade effectively is their leader, and there are various different creatures in this world that are part of the Darkspawn, but the Fade is almost like one of the field commanders. They actually sort of control the hordes of Trollics as well. So it's there's a lot of different servants of the Dragon Reborn, and so they are ultimately looking for their master, the person that will be there. The other interesting thing about it is that we do hear from Moiraine right at the end. She says, the Dragon Reborn, it's one of you, but there is one who will stand against him as well. Oh, okay. So there is also that aspect to it. So at the end, before they get on their horses to ride off, she does say there is one who can stand against him. The Dragon Reborn, it's one of you. I'm paraphrasing a little bit there, but there is that idea as well of there being a savior in a sense as well.
Right. So let me piece that all together. So Moiraine and the Aes Sedai are looking for the Dragon Reborn because it's the reincarnation of the dragon who in the past effectively almost destroyed the world.
Yes. Who almost broke the wheel.
Okay. in the parlance of Wheel of Time. Okay. So almost broke the world, I'm going to say. So I don't confuse myself. They are currently the keepers of the source, which is the central kind of magic source for the Aes Sedai. So what Moiraine was saying at the end there was there will be a reborn dragon, and there will also be someone reborn that will be able to stop the dragon's
Yeah, that was
advances if the dragon is the thing that is going to break the world again, effectively. And the Fade and his Trollics. I absolutely love that name.
It's great, isn't it?
For his people.
I keep thinking of Blackadder with Blackadder the Second with Miriam Margolyes, where she goes, "Well, hey, Trollics, it sounds exactly like."
Right.
And insert
something we're not insert
cut out.
Podcast,
Yes,
right,
exactly.
I get you. So the Fade and the Trollics are effectively looking for their former leader, who will effectively go up against the Aes Sedai. So, while the Fade looks really, really scary and really evil, and the Trollics are effectively slaughtering everything around them, they're also looking for the same person to lead them. And I'm wondering what the intention of Moiraine and the Aes Sedai is. If they do find the dragon, will they be trying to turn him or her towards their side, or will they try to kill them so that
like the guy at the start?
Exactly. Yeah. So it goes back to having to go through another reincarnation in another 20 years or something like that. So interesting. Yeah. Okay. So that's the two factions, I suppose, that we're seeing here, looking for the Dragon Reborn.
Exactly. The Aes Sedai and at least at this stage, the Voldemort lookalike on horseback, are looking for the Dragon Reborn. And so, this is these are the groupings, as you say, the struggle.
But very interesting that Moiraine did call out that the reborn dragon could be a boy or girl. They don't know. Literally, the only knowledge that they have is they were born around 20 years ago from this Festival of Lights around 20 years ago. There's 4 kids here that are all the same age. And likely one of them would be the person who is the Dragon Reborn, but they don't have a huge amount more information than that. They have to have some kind of magic or latent magic abilities, effectively, to be the dragon. They may not know themselves, so that's why she's taken all 4 of them away from the town with her.
Exactly. And I mean, we get the hints throughout the episodes. There's talk of wolves being forced from the mountaintops into the valley. We see the dead sheep in a pattern.
Yep.
And
I was trying to work out what that pattern was. It looked like a big comma.
It did. Yes, it did. A big comma. I have no idea. I really.
I presume it wasn't drawn in the middle of the book or something.
Yeah, it's kind of it reminiscent of, I don't want to draw too many parallels to other fantasy sort of books, but with Game of Thrones, how the White Walkers laid the bodies of their victims in that spiral form.
Oh, okay.
There's a sense of that about it.
Yep.
And also we have the wind that both Nyneave and Egwene listen to that is a little threatening. So yeah, these are the two kind of factions here. And I have to say, I thought the Fade was done really well. I loved it. I mean, there's a great description that the cloak just hangs, that even with a wind, it doesn't move. It's like stationary, like a very kind of which just gives the impression of this really intense, absolutely focus that nothing can affect it physically as well as from its mission and focus.
Absolutely. And I'm sure a nightmare when you're on set and there's a mild wind if you're filming outside. Oh no.
Absolutely.
Can't let us clip move. Excellent. We talked about the Trollics there a minute ago, the army of the Fade, I suppose, or the army that come in and attack the town. Let's talk about the attack itself, because that is quite central to the episode. In our final spoke for the episode, the massive village attack. Like, what a way to kick this off. Everybody's dancing in the village, as you mentioned, to kind of celebrate this Festival of Lights. And then Ben, I think it is, he just drops to the ground because he's got an axe impaled in his back, which kicks off this pretty gruesome attack in the village.
Yeah, I thought this was really well done. I loved it. I thought it really gave that sense of danger for the village. And I have to say, I thought the Trollics looked really good. I think, both devilish and really scary. I mean, I guess when you've got something that is kind of looking half human, half goat or devilish in that sense, it depends.
Some Minotaur in there as well.
Yeah, and I thought I think they look really good. They're kind of better than how I kind of pictured them as I was reading. Like, and, you know, given the name, which can sort of get a few giggles, I think they're real menacing. And I thought they were sort of done so well here. And I love the attack here. I think, there's so much going on. I mean, you know, standout absolutely is as, Moiraine uses the power. I mean, it was just so very, very cool. With the kind of weave going up into the clouds with the lightning strike, moving objects, all this different thing. And then, you know, really with Lan and his sword skills, dancing around, chopping away at the Trollics to defend her as she is defending the town.
Yeah. This is really the first time we've seen her use the full powers during this battle. Like we see her use it to warm up the hot tub, when Lan's feeling a little chilly, in the,
I'm not surprised.
we see her using it there. But I really liked this. I like the way that they've done the special effect of her pulling from the ground almost. She's pulling the power from the ground to use it to control things around her. We did see a little bit of earlier on with the Aes Sedai pulling down half of a mountain to block the path of the guy running away, but here she's using it defensively, where she's throwing out fireballs, she's pulling apart bits of the ground and pulling apart, sadly, bits of the only pub in town to throw at the Trollics, which promptly collapse on the ground.
I kind of feel Moiraine had more to do with the seeming sort of destruction and ruin of Emond's Field than the Trollics. And I mean, I love the shot as the Winespring Inn sort of collapses because she's been using the stones to hurl at the Trollics.
Yes.
And I love the dust cloud and how Lan runs to kind of protect and cover her, because she's also being caught with a knife from one of the Trollics as well. And we see from because effectively there's two attacks. There's the village, but there is the attack on Rand's home up the sheep farm up in the mountains, and we do hear that there is the Trollic poison kind of on the blade as well.
That's right.
And from Moiraine who patches up his dad. Once they make it back down.
More than patches up, she basically sucks that poison out of his shoulder using her powers. And seals back up the wound.
And the nice little touch there is you see the effort. Now, whether that's to do with the fact that she's also been sort of hit with the dagger, but you get the sense that the use of this power does take a toll on the user as well.
Yeah, I took it as that. I took it that every time she used the power, she was getting more broken down by it. She is massively powerful by the looks of things, but I don't think she could have sustained that for a massively long amount of time. That's partly why Lan is protecting her throughout, so she doesn't get interrupted in casting the spell. I'm going to say, that's what it kind of looked like to me. But a really interesting battle there. But yes, very sad to see the Winespring Inn gone. Especially because isn't that where Egwene's parents work and live?
Yes.
They have rooms to hand that they could effectively, if somebody else's house had been taken down, they could have moved into the Winespring Inn. But now the Winespring Inn is gone. There's no hostelry in town, I guess we'd call it, or no hotel in town for anybody that wants to stay. Oh well, farewell Winespring Inn.
Yeah, farewell. But we would have loved to have drank in you, of course.
But I did like the battle though at the farm, as you mentioned, between Rand and his dad, and the invading Trollics. You know, it seems like they had an all points attack going on where they were taking in everybody, because they seem to live quite far outside the village as sheep farmers, seem to live quite far outside, but they were attacking there at the same time as they were attacking the village. So, you know, as we mentioned in the previous point, again, that this is about potentially they also see Rand as a possible Dragon Reborn, so they are dispatching someone to get him. I'm not too sure whether the Trollics are getting the message, though. It seems like they're there to attack everybody. I'm not too sure whether Perrin was safe when they were attacking him, or Rand was safe when they were attacking him. It feels like they were there to kill everything in their path.
Yeah, I got the sense, I think, with Rand, and I think with Egwene as well, that they weren't looking to kill them. And even Mat managed to go off and rescue his two younger sisters, and they go and hide in the oak tree outside of the village.
Yeah. So he doesn't have a confrontation with them.
No, he doesn't.
Perrin does, and Perrin and his wife do, and Perrin seems to be as much under attack as his wife is. And I thought Rand was under as much attack as his father was in that scene. So I just wasn't sure whether Trollics are a bit more of a blunt instrument, and hopefully the Dragon Reborn will survive their attack.
I think they are, and I think that's why the Fade is there to kind of control them, almost to instill discipline through fear, because otherwise they would be that rampaging horde that trash everything. But I kind of got the sense in some of the scenes, just a few, because Rand is flung around their home, and as you say, Perrin is deep in battle with the Trollics coming into the blacksmith.
Yeah.
But there were just a few moments where you got the sense that, the Trollic wasn't going in with the big axe or the sword.
Okay.
And indeed, the taking of Nyneave as one example, in that, okay, we don't know what's going to happen to her. We don't know whether she's even going to have survived. I mean, Egwene believes that she's gone, that she's dead. But they take Nyneave here as well, which could be part of that sort of link to the conversation that Moiraine has with her around the pool.
Exactly. Moiraine kind of took her off the list, but she was on the list initially, is what it felt like with that conversation. So probably still on the list of the Fade, since he hadn't had that conversation with her, I suppose. What I did really like about the battle as well is that we saw a bit of the confusion of a battle going on. We saw how many people were being attacked, how many people were being killed and eaten on the battlefield and being cut apart effectively by the weaponry. And then we also see Perrin mistakenly kill his wife during the battle too, with everything that's going on. And that's, I know you said to your memory he wasn't married in the book, but I presume that's going to have a big impact on him as a character going forward.
I think so. I think the really interesting thing in that moment with Perrin is just before, he is going quite hard on the Trollic after he's effectively put the axe into the Trollic's chest, and then once down on the floor, it's just that frenzied attack by him. And I think that's the really interesting thing, is that he then is disturbed, but it's his wife, and the reaction is he swings with the axe and it goes into her midriff.
Exactly, yeah, and I'm sure that's going to, as I say, play out on his mind as the season goes on. Yeah,
and it's to your point. It shows the chaos of a battle, of war, that not everyone is a professional soldier, and so you're being reactive. I even like that. There's a moment where Mat is looking for his two sisters. He runs out and he's stumbling around, avoiding things, but he actually stumbles over a Trollic who's eating one of the villagers.
Yeah.
But the Trollic is not interested. It kind of goes back to feeding.
It's got a fresh meal in front of it.
Yeah. And I the other little touch I really liked about this was, you have that epicness of Moiraine using the power, but then there is also that little scene with the villagers with their pitchforks and their own blades.
Yeah.
Once the numbers have been turned from that epicness from Moiraine, you want a bit of this, and go in, surround one of the Trollics, and it's pitchforks and blades sort of taking one of the Trollics down. I kind of like that element as well, that, after the initial fight and scare of the attack, okay, with the numbers kind of maybe a bit more balanced, they're happy to wade in to defend their village as well. So I really liked that moment as well.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really cool. That's kind of the majority of the episode, really. We're now off on the road with Moiraine and our 4 major characters that we were introduced to here. So I guess we'll find out they seem to be off to the White Tower, which may, if my instincts are correct for this episode, may possibly or should possibly be called the Ivory Tower that the Aes Sedai live in. That's my instinct so far. I'll see how that plays out in my mind as the episodes go on. But right now, effectively, they're being convinced they need to leave, because if they don't leave, the rest of the town and their families will all be killed by another attack from the Trollics. If they get out of there, then the town will be safe, is what they're
and you see all the torches coming down from the mountains. And there's an interesting sort of little bit from Lan speaking with Moiraine, saying, how did they get here so quick as well? Which I think will be important moving forward in the story as well. Yeah, but I think that's our 3 big moments, covers off a lot of the episode. Derek, have you got any notes for us?
The only note I have, and I just wasn't sure, it's just because the camera lingered on it a bit long. There was a moment when Tam, Rand's father, is being attacked at the farm, and he pulls out a sword, which has a marking on it, has a bird, it's a heron on the blade. Of the sword that he pulls out. It's just because the camera lingered on it a while. I'm presuming that's something that is important. Is it something to do with his history, Tam's history, maybe?
Well, certainly I think this blade will be explained over the course of the episode.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
And you do see that moment as well where Rand is looking at his dad, who seems to be pretty handy with a blade as well. When he gets it, pretty competent with it as well. So again, another element of the history of his dad, but the family as well.
Right.
I would say there's probably there's certain things that aren't playing out immediately, because the show is introducing and taking quite a large chunk of the first bit of sort of the book, really, the first part of the opening, really. But I guess this is going to be breadcrumbed a bit more evenly throughout the series. But certainly the linger was definitely there on the heron, on the hilt. I've just got 2 other notes, really. One is, we do see Padden Fane here, the peddler who is selling the lanterns to Mat, seemingly quite relaxed as the Darkspawn attack, as if he has maybe led them there, or because he's a peddler traveling around, so whether it's by accident, but I mean he slips off down the side, so it's not entirely clear at the moment as to whether it's just that he is the one that's led them to the village.
Interesting.
Or whether maybe he's just kind of a relaxed chap, really, so that
just stick out of it.
Or whether he maybe have more involvement with the dark spawn and be in league in some way.
I really just assumed that the only reason that the Fade were there was because they got the exact same information that Moiraine had. Moiraine knew before even getting to the town there were 4 kids in their 20s there. Go check this town out, basically. So I just assumed Fade had the same information. So
and I guess there's a sense of ripples within the source as well. I just can't quite remember.
Okay.
I think the other one, and it's more just a notable absence, is that whilst the character of Tondril Merrilin is cast, he's not there in the village. Effectively, this character is a gleeman, a traveling entertainer between all the different cities, towns, and villages of this world. Master storyteller, musician, good poker player, does plays. It's kind of like that. He goes around and gives the news, that kind of stuff as
Okay.
well, so there are different ranks. I think you have Gleeman to the royal court.
Okay.
But he also is in the village at the time of the attack, so I suspect they're going to introduce him in a different way at a different time,
Right.
which I think is good, because I must say I think this character is really interesting.
Okay, so he plays a big part in this section of the book.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. It'll be interesting to see him, I guess, down the line of the show.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool.
Well, I think with that, Derek, certainly for the non-Wheel of Time person, did you enjoy this first episode of the Wheel of Time?
I enjoyed it more the second time I watched it. The first time I watched it, I had the same kind of thing that happens when you're watching the first episode of a big establishing show, when you're watching sci-fi or fantasy. Particularly, they have so much to explain about the world you're going to be spending time in that it sometimes feels a bit, I think the word I used was humorless. No, it's not like I don't like dark TV shows or dark movies. I love, that's kind of one of the things I really love, but, it felt like they were trying to get across so much exposition the first time I watched it that I was lost in the amount that I was expected to take in from the first episode, I suppose.
It's quite Basil expositioning, and I think that's the difference with Mat, is that he's actually in the moment of having to sort and look after his two sisters because of the issues in the family, and looking for money and trying to make money. So the conversations feel more sort of the day to day. So you get a sense of the character, whereas people talking about things that have happened a long time ago, the context is great because there's the Feast of Souls, but it's like talking about church all the time or something, so it can be feel a little unnatural, I guess.
Yeah, but I do think they accomplished it. But the second time I watched it, I felt like I understood what was going on. I felt like I was really intrigued to see what's coming up in the season and what's coming up for the rest of the show. So I do love these kind of things in fantasy books. The quest, the gathering the group together, the going off to a destination. They're always pretty standard of the start of a fantasy book. So I do really enjoy them, and I thought the attack from the Trollics was a really exciting scene. I loved even the opening of what the world has become, and hearing some of the history, hearing some of the ancient history from the older times that we're not looking at in this show. That's all really intriguing. So, an exciting first episode overall, because it's getting me ready for the rest of the season pretty well. I love the cast. I think, Rosamund Pike particularly is fantastic. Her voice, it's something that's always been really, really good. She's done lots of movies that have had voiceover in them, and there's a reason. She's got a really good voice. I think Gone Girl was one of her big standout movies, and a lot of that movie is voiceover from her character. And I could listen to it all day. I think she's really good at getting across big ideas and complex ideas. But I definitely thought this needed 2 watches for me. How about yourself, John? Did you enjoy this introduction to the TV version of Wheel of Time?
Look, I'm not going to lie. I needed the second watch of it as well, actually. I had to actually give myself a good slap across the face because it's because I've read the book so close to when this has come out that a lot of the detail actually is very fresh for me. So the first time I was watching it, I was like going, for example, was Tomdril Merrilin, and I was like going, oh, I can't believe they've left him out. And of course, it's not that they've left him out. It's an adaptation and they're doing it differently. And I think I approached that the second time of watching it and actually realized there's a huge amount of information, as you say, being brought here, but it's been done in really interesting ways through Egwene joining the women's circle and that whole thing with Nyneave that then sort of links in with showing that suspicion and distrust of the Aes Sedai through her own experiences. And then, of course, you've got that wonderful Rosamund Pike as Moiraine, and just that detachment, that detached, noble air about her. You see a bit more of a relaxed shoulders with Lan, certainly given that they bathe together, and there's that wonderful Witcher-esque moment of Lan. Oh, and crossed with Ghost of Tsushima as well, the video game of Lan getting into the tub.
So requires a hot tub scene.
Yes, absolutely. So, and I loved the attack. I thought that was really, really good. Just showing off the Darkspawn with the Trollics and with the Fade, the power of the true source being wielded by Moiraine. The effect it's had on our four principal sort of characters here of Rand with the attack on his own home and the injury to his dad, Perrin effectively accidentally killing his wife, which is sure to have things moving forward. Egwene with the loss of Nyneave, the person who she's just pledged herself to be her apprentice. And you have Mat, who is kind of out of the attack, but for me, I'm with you. I really enjoyed this character through this episode. So a lot of stuff in here, but I think it's essential for a series like this. And so I normally rate our shows. So I give this 3.5 Trollics out of 5. I would say I was probably 3. I'm debating about whether I should do 4, but I definitely the second time of watching, I kind of just took myself by the old shoulders and gave myself a shake to just say, it's an adaptation of the book. It is not the book in picture form.
And of course, remember, this is the opening episode of 3 released on the same day.
Exactly.
On Amazon Prime. So I'm sure getting all of this exposition into one episode with 2 more that you can watch directly afterwards probably may help as well.
Definitely.
But we didn't watch it that way. As always, we're watching 1 episode at a time for that. So thanks for that, John. I think we need to get some refreshments, John.
I think we do. A nice beer at the Winespring Inn, fellow Reborn Dragons. Yes, we are going to the Wheel of Time pub quiz. Our first question for this pub quiz is...
I'm not going to answer this out loud, but I'm going to see if I could guess it by you time.
I'm sure you can.
What's the question?
And as I say, this is very much about from the episode. It's not into the lore.
Absolutely.
Unless it's in the episode and you can answer it from the episode. So question 1 from episode 1. What is the present that Rand keeps in his pocket all day before giving it to Egwene?
Ooh, very good. I think I know that one. Excellent.
Yes. And there's a little conversation with his dad about what he used to do as well as a young whippersnapper.
Very good. So you given extra clues there, John.
I know.
If you have the answer to that question, you can email us to feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com with the answer to that one. You need to have all 8 answers correct by the end of the season, and we will choose a winner of the goodies, the Wheel of Time goodies at the end of the season. We'll tell you what those are as the episodes go on, and as some goodies are released from the show. But you can send them either weekly as you get the answers to the questions, or you can send them at the end of the season in one big batch. We usually record our wrap-up podcast about a week after the final episode comes out as well. So that's roughly how long you'll have. So it's say 31st of December of 2021 will be the cutoff point for the Wheel of Time pub quiz.
And we'll be putting up the questions on the website as well, so you can head on over to tvpodcastindustries.com and to the pub quiz section there. Just one more time, what is the present that Rand keeps in his pocket all day before giving it to Egwene?
Excellent. Thank you so much for joining us for our first episode of Wheel of Time. We will be back later today with our discussion of episode 2, Shadows Waiting. I think for that one it's going to be just you and Chris on that one, John, isn't it?
Yes, I think so.
Excellent.
We are taking some time to delve into the 3 episodes that are released there on the 19th of November.
And also, we will be covering Marvel's Hawkeye from next week, which is also releasing 2 episodes. So we do have to split our time a little bit across all the episodes that we'll be covering over the next week.
Yes, we certainly do.
And if you want to get access to all of those, as we mentioned earlier on, make sure you subscribe to TV Podcast Industries on your podcast player of choice. Just search TV Podcast Industries. You'll get everything that we cover. I think we're 628 episodes now, I think, roughly.
Yes.
So yes, you should be able to get access to all of those episodes. Let's get on to some feedback from episode 1.
Yes, first up, some email feedback. You can send in feedback through email. Just send it into feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com. First up, we have Coffee and Vodka has sent his thoughts about episode 1. Greetings, fellow filthy chosen ones. Being a champion of source material over artistic license, I couldn't be happier that I remember very little about the series I read 2 decades ago. Free to try to enjoy it on its own merits. A fine and brutal world-building first episode. The good, Rosamund Pike, Michael McElhatton, Rafe Judkins, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. showrunner, perfect on-point kickoff to the rest of the series. The bad, cut and paste religious and spiritual references, unfortunately also part of the source material, irritating backlash from guys allergic to female empowerment and social change. 4 out of 5 scruffy, nerf-herding beastmen. Peace and on to episode 2, Coffee and Vodka. Thanks so much, Coffee and Vodka. Yeah, it's really good to see Rosamund Pike. Loved her in so many movies, and for her to be on TV and playing Moiraine, I think she really, really nails it. Absolutely. And yes, Michael McElhatton from Game of Thrones. Yes, he was. Yes, I think his sigil was the Flayed Man. So playing a less psychotic person in this fantasy series.
Yeah, there's no one really more psychotic in the entire series of Game of Thrones than the Boltons. And,
yes, exactly.
There were a lot of psychotic characters in that show, so glad to see him in a much more proper fatherly role this time.
Yeah, definitely.
And as for the irritating backlash from guys allergic to female empowerment, yeah, totally agree. It's been so annoying seeing posters out there for the cast and characters in here. This is a story that's been established for decades, and there's still people on the internet getting annoyed with the fact that, oh my god, this show is led by women. How could this possibly happen? It's horrible to see, but I really try to ignore it because sadly those people exist, but they are easy to ignore, which is great.
Yeah, I guess they just must be so angry all of the time about literally everything. It must be exhausting. Anyway,
must be.
Let's forget about that and focus for sure on this series and the episodes. Absolutely. Because it's really being framed nicely with this first episode. So thanks so much, Coffee and Vodka. Yep. Really appreciate your thoughts as always.
Thanks, Coffee and Vodka. Let's get on to some Facebook feedback from our group at facebook.com/groups/TV Podcast Industries. First up, Dr. Bob Phillips says, I enjoyed this a lot. Loved the darkness and the effects, the cold of her ladyship, and the unexpected beauty of the village. I can't quite work out yet whether the peddler, Fence, will save the day, but he's too well described to be a one-shot side player.
Ooh, yes. Interesting stuff, Bob. Yes, that peddler, selling his wares in Emond's Field, and we have that interaction between him and Mat as well. Padden Fane is his name. So we'll see how his character plays out, for sure.
But I think you're right. I think there is more to Padden Fane.
Yes, there's a little moment where in the attack on the village, the camera pans to him, and coupled to his introduction, selling the lanterns to Mat, suggests that he will return, shall we say.
Yeah, hopefully we'll see him back in the future. Thanks, Dr. Bob. Great that you're joining us for this podcast about Wheel of Time as well.
Definitely. Thanks, Bob. Also on Facebook, Deanna Debreen Maskell says, it has been a long time since I read the series, but this opener brought it all rushing back to me. The casting is amazing, and the score and set design just do everything to bring it to life. Every one of these leads and supporting actors just does it for me on every level. I fell in love with the characters I loved so much from the books all over again, and I just have to highlight what they did with Mat, story and character, because I am so into this character, and he was so unlikable in the books. I have heard complaints about the opening with the Red Sisters, which I agree was an odd choice for hooking non-readers, and the general pacing. It was really fast-paced, and I hope that non-readers of the books were as drawn into the story as I. I'm so excited about this journey. Thanks, Deanna.
Excellent.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm completely with you on that. In the sense that I think he is a standout in this first episode, but I did really enjoy his character in the first book that I read, which is the only book of this. I mean, I'm on to book 2 at the moment, but I really liked his story, but the focus maybe isn't there on him in quite the same way as the point of view character really for that book, which is Rand. But I just think this is a really great adaptation from the books for Mat. So I've really been enjoying Mat's story here.
And to reassure you, Deanna, as a non-reader, I'm not completely lost. I just need to pay a bit more attention to the episodes as I watch them to pick up all the stuff that's being thrown to us about the new world. But don't worry, definitely on board after the first episode.
Yeah, thanks, Deanna. Also, Dan Lee says, as someone who has no experience with the book, I enjoyed this a lot, even if I'm not 100% sure what on earth is going on.
There you go, Deanna. Dan, obviously, with you on that as well.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. And that's a brilliant thing, actually, that you enjoyed it, even though there is so much information to absorb and that world building. So, I mean, that is really, really positive, really good thing.
Good stuff. Thanks to everybody who sent us on feedback on Facebook. We also have a final bit of feedback, a voicemail from Steve Brown as he live Steve's episode 1 of Wheel of Time. I wonder how this will work for Wheel of Time as it's such a complex show.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's hear what Steve has to say.
All right, here it goes, TV Podcast Industries. This is first episode of Wheel of Time. I don't know what this is about, but this woman's talking about all the men all ruined the world or whatever. Oh, they just threw her in the river? Is this some kind of like samurai test thing? Well, she survived the river at least, so the ceremony obviously went fairly well. I guess that's handy. That's a handy power to have, right? To be able to heat up the bathwater for your lover, I guess. That's pretty cool. Okay, this person riding in on the horse looks like they don't have a nose. Is that he should not be named? Oh, I guess they were eyeless and noseless. Okay, so it's about reincarnation, and I guess this is a celebration they have every year, and they send out these. This is kind of cool though, and they're having their little dance. And what just hit him in the back? Oh, that's not good. Dang, these monsters are breaking into houses. Well, that was a cool move where she ducked down and he was able to move the sword over and get the guy behind her. That was a cool little move there. Oh, dude, watch where you're swinging that axe. Oh, man. Oh. Okay, I'm intrigued. So one of these 4 is the Dragon Reborn, and she's got to get him to the good guys before the bad guys find him.
The Wheel of Time.
Okay.
Excellent, Steve. Boiled down the entire episode in just a short phrase of one of these 4 is the Dragon Reborn, and she has to save them before the bad guy gets them. That's basically it, right?
It really is. It's shall we say, it's the Wheel of Time in a nutshell.
There you go.
Yeah.
Steve, I loved your live Steve there because you caught some of the big shocking moments, and definitely a lesson for us all. Be careful where you're swinging that axe.
Most definitely. Yes, I think it would be handy for to be able to reheat your bathwater. If you had that power.
Definitely.
That is pretty good. And yes, the festival, the Feast of Lights, or Beltane, is really, central to this opening. And it's a really nice way of bringing in, the concept of the wheel that keeps on turning and that weaves what it wills, as sort of brought out by Tam and Rand's conversation as they talk about the dead mother.
Yes. Oh, one slight correction, Steve. Lan is the man-at-arms for Moiraine. He's protecting her. They are very close. They've shared a lot of things in their life, but not a lover as far as I'm aware of.
No, they're bonded, they bond. So I guess they're just very comfortable with one another, to the extent of a bit of joint bathing.
Sharing a naked bath, as you do with your charges.
Exactly. it is both sort of, very social, and it also is good for the planet. It saves water.
Exactly. Thanks so much, Steve, for your live, Steve. I really enjoyed that.
Absolutely.
Hopefully we'll hear more of those throughout the season of Wheel of Time.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. Please send any of your thoughts, theories, comments on the Wheel of Time series on each episode through email at feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com or on the spoiler post on our Facebook group over on facebook.com/groups/TV Podcast Industries. Please support the podcast by subscribing, rating, leaving a review, but importantly, please share the podcast, because by sharing the podcast, we share the love, and that is one way in which you can support the podcast. Absolutely. We are also over on Patreon at patreon.com/TV Podcast Industries if you would like to support us on a regular basis. Or for a one-off basis, you can head on over to buymeacoffee.com/TVPI.
Yes, buy us a coffee over there. But thank you so much to everybody that's been supporting us through Patreon, through Buy Me a Coffee, but also supporting us by subscribing to the podcast and sharing the podcast. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll be back next time.
Yeah, thank you so much, fellow dragons, for joining us. It is a pleasure speaking to new dragons and having returning dragons, I guess, even though you may have been known as something else, like Defenders. But remember, keep watching, keep listening, and in the immortal words of Moiraine, there are no beginnings or endings, but this is the end of the podcast.
Bye.
Bye.